And with inflation on the rise since last fall, Americans have been significantly affected by the rising cost of goods and services, and more than 8 in 10 Americans now say the economy is either an extremely or very important issue in determining how they will vote. Folks, there's a ton of news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits that I want you to know, so be sure to continue watching this video because you definitely don't want to miss out on this. We have a ton of good news to come. Biden and his administration unveiled a brand new plan for how they would take action to help the American people financially. Eligible Americans may be able to claim up to $500 in extra stimulus cash. So President Biden spoke to a crowd of union supporters this week, hoping to put a positive spin on his economic record and made inflation not seen in decades. And Biden sought to reassure the people that tackling the worst inflation in the nation has seen in decades is a top priority for him and the administration. The speech came a day before the Federal Reserve could raise interest rates as much as 3/4 of a percentage point, as it attempts to get inflation under control. The president acknowledged that inflation is sapping the strength of a lot of families as the price of gas and food skyrockets. But even as he sought to emphasize administration, it's fully focused on the problem. The president conceded he is left without many options to fight the price hikes. The president acknowledged inflation is sapping the strength of a lot of families as the price of gas and food skyrockets. But even as he sought to emphasize his administration is fully focused on this, the president conceded he is left without many options to fight the price hikes, particularly in a narrowly divided Senate. Folks, I do want to see President Biden do something for the American people, and I hope he can step up to the plate and give out stimulus checks before it's too late. Biden stated the problem is Republicans in Congress are doing everything they can to stop the plans to bring down costs on ordinary families. And that's why the results are not finished either. And Biden on Tuesday touted his administration's efforts to the nation's recovery from the crisis. He also mentioned some actions are taken, and others he's considering, to fight inflation, but Biden has previously said there is not much more he's able to do that will have a noticeable effect. He's also mentioned some actions taken right now, and others he's considering, to fight inflation, but Biden has previously said that there is not much more he's able to do that will have a noticeable effect. The White House has been trying for months to demonstrate its commitment to dampening inflation and bringing down soaring prices that are placing stress on American families. So combined with a dropping stock market and intense warnings from high-powered CEOs, the economy has become the White House's top political problem and priority. But the president's spokesperson argues that Americans will be able to weather the economic storm thanks to the actions that Biden took in office. And now the Minnesota's frontline workers are able to pay and apply for their share of $500 million in hero pay. Employees, however, must take certain steps to comply with notification requirements. The Minnesota governor signed the Frontline Worker Pay Law, authorizing state-funded bonus and payments to various frontline workers, including assisted living employees. Employers must post a notice about the program at each work site and provide papers on how to get it, and provide papers on how to receive the check.
Do that job better to make sure that Western drought does not significantly get worse, but we can improve.
First, thank you to this committee for the investment of $8.3 billion. For just investment in storage, it's roughly equivalent in the last 18 months of this administration that the previous administration invested. So we invested $461 million in storage alone. Resources are always of assistance, but really it's having to style.
How quick is it going to be put out? How quick will that money be invested?
Some of those we've already put out. Frankly, there's some projects that we're working on, Los Vaqueros in California being an example of it.
Mr. Ensminger?
I think Congress needs to make massive investments in agricultural efficiencies. I agree with Mr. O'Toole that we need to prioritize food security, but we can't balance the structural deficit by evacuating cities. So we're going to need to make our ability to grow the same amount of food with less water a priority.
Dr. Hall.
I think certainly one of the more urgent issues is providing the information that we need, and that includes continuing robust support for the USGS and NRCS that manage our data systems, approving Senator Cortez Masto's bill to implement OpenET in the USGS. And I think more broadly, the support for giving the Bureau of Reclamation the broad flexibility to work with states on new approaches like groundwater management and groundwater storage. Thank you.
Mr. Stern?
Well, Senator, as you know, we wouldn't at CRS necessarily recommend any one specific approach, but I would say that there is more support among observers for activities that can be done from the ground up and stakeholder-driven things that may vary from one basin to the next than there is for top-down, more command and control types of federal activity.
Mr. O'Toole, do you have anything else you want to add to your, something you think would be the most urgent thing we could do?
Senator, I testified in front of the World Bank last year as part of the climate meetings I went to, and the biggest word that they appreciated was scale. And in a meeting with the major foundation Sunday on the forest, they said, we're nibbling. And that's the problem.
In 2018, we have finally started to see some evidence of a little bit of VIX backwardation, although it's not at levels that I think are probably important just yet. You know, there's 70% of stocks now that are down more than 20% off their highs. So, you know, any given year when the market's down 20%, the odds certainly are in your favor to try to take a stab at trying to buy for a rebound. But it's much different, you know, in saying that is it a bottom versus the bottom, and whether it's going to be a recession with a capital R versus a small r. And really none of us know the question to that. But, you know, I think it's a great risk reward when I start to see some evidence of equity put to call getting close to 1, which was near what we saw in March 2020. Obviously, some evidence this past week of a little bit of oversized selling, that meaning the TRIN or the ARMS index showed 2 readings of over 3.5. So some big selling on the downside. And that came specifically from a lot of groups that had not been going down recently, like energy all of a sudden, and utilities. And, you know, these starting to join technology on the downside, I think is a meaningful change in character for this market that investors should pay attention to.
When do you make a more definitive statement, and what causes you to do so? What's the level that makes sense to you in your mind?
Well, look, technical analysis is all about price action. And while, you know, myself or anybody could say we're getting close, you know, we need to see markets go from a downtrend to starting to make higher highs and higher lows. And unfortunately, you know, there's no way to catch the bottom of that. That's going to take a movement over 4,200. So I have some cycles that suggest that we're going to bottom towards the end of June, you know, towards the Russell rebalance, potentially as early as next week. And I think a couple things are important. One is that we seem to be getting close to a time when yields and also the dollar should peak out. And those are important because times when the dollar is rising rapidly happened in 2000, 2001, 2008, also 2014. Those proved to be difficult for the market. So if growth starts to slow meaningfully, and we're seeing evidence of copper breaking down substantially this week in a way that the dollar starts to roll over, and I think that might be a few weeks away. And the 30-year has really peaked out right near 2018 highs. And we saw evidence today of technology outperforming as yields drop. So that's the key for investors. Watch when yields and the dollar start to roll over. Growth should start to act better. You look at FANG stocks this week, you know, stocks like